Great, excellent. So we have a wonderful, wonderful session today. We have been doing this initiative, our CFE Community Chat initiative, for several months. So since April of 2020, this is sort of when we kicked off this initiative. And since then, we've held about 30 of these interactive learning sessions. So we're really excited to add this 3-part SEL series to the mix. For those of you who are new to CFE, don't know much about us, I'm Sarah Hoppy-Knight. I'm the co-executive director of the organization. We're a Chicago-based education nonprofit. We've been around for, this is our 38th year, supporting and funding CPS educators so they can most effectively engage with their students and continue to grow professionally. We've been offering grant, fellowship, and professional growth opportunities to CPS pre-K through 12th grade educators consistently over that almost 4-decade period. So it's just wonderful to be able to continue the work today. So we know, of course, Anne-Marie and I absolutely know how exhausting your days are, particularly considering all the added challenges and emotional turmoil of the past 2 years, which is crazy to me to think that this has been going on for that long. But we are so glad that you chose to spend some time with us this afternoon. So thanks again for joining live. A few quick notes before we get started. If you have any questions during today's session, please feel free to pop those into the chat box. You'll see that sort of in your panel. I'm sure you're familiar with Zoom at this point. Or you can just raise your hand, use that raise your hand function, and we will allow you to speak those questions aloud. Small group, very informal. So questions that do, however, come in through the chat box will be monitored by me, and then we'll address them throughout the presentation. So I'll shoot any questions that come in through there over to Anne-Marie, and she can sort of decide how they fit in and when it makes sense to respond to those. The recorded session, as I mentioned, will be posted along with any shared resources that pop up today on our website's resource roundup section later this week. So that's a link that I will include in our follow-up message that I send once the session is over within the next day or two. Okay, so let's get into it. Anne-Marie Downing is our presenter today. She has a BS in moderate special education and an MS in generic consulting teacher. She's been an accomplished teacher for 30 years, working with students ranging from preschool to high school in a variety of academic settings. She's certified as a conscious parent coach, and she's a relentless advocate for children and families, serving on committees and with volunteer organizations that focus on the health and well-being of all youth. Anne-Marie, I've known you for a long time, and this is the first time you're coming on as a presenter. I'm so grateful that you're with us today and kicking off this three session series. So I will yield the floor to you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and I'm honored to be here with all of you tonight. So the first thing, since I am relatively new to Chicago, I've been here close to 5 years because I was a teacher living in Massachusetts for all my life, and then we moved here. So at first thing I want you to do is in the chat box, can you tell me what school you teach at and also what grade level? So school and grade level. Okay, so my next, okay, thank you. Great. Okay, so my next question to all of you is during the school day today, or if you weren't in school today, how were you feeling? Can you name 2 or 3 emotions that you were feeling during the day today? Mm. Anybody else have? So people are feeling run down, not supported. Somebody's feeling excited and happy. So we have a range of emotions that people are feeling at this point. Okay, so somebody needed a mental health day. Good for you. And my next question is, when you do have difficult emotions, how do you usually deal with them? Okay, so people are trying to get busy, distract themselves. Anybody else? Okay, close off, take a mental health day. Okay, so it's been really challenging. Now I would like to share my screen with you. And so I'm going to just do a few things here. And so welcome to the workshop, Lightening Your Emotional Backpack. And I'm sure that teachers within the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic, you had so many emotions. And like myself, I felt happy at times, compassionate, angry, sad, despair, frustration, worry, and all of these emotions we have, at least, at me, I keep just pushing them down and pushing them down. And I'm sure you probably maybe did the same thing. And our backpacks, at least I know my backpack completely gets overflowed by the emotion. I like for a minute just to play this song to you, because when I hear this song, and I know like yourself, maybe you have playlists that you listen to that you really enjoy, it brings you a sense, I know for myself, it brings me a sense of happiness, especially when I'm hearing this song. So here we are. We have our wonderful emojis. And for most of us, we're using these emojis to communicate. So it's either a text or through an email. We send off these little faces that tell people how we're feeling. Perhaps it may not be exactly how we're feeling, but we do bring these emotions along and we convey them through messages. So for example, we may, and I like to call my emotions a certain name. So I might say, okay, well, there's Happy Harold. Or I might say, there is Angry Al. And anger is one of those emotions that people are more accepting of, because many times anger can bring us to do an action. And, it gets really bad though when it's a violent action. So, where the protesters, we had in Chicago, as you know, many people were protesting. And, that's fine. The protesting was fine. It brought people to do something they were angry about, but it brought them to do something positive. But when we started to have the looting going on, that anger created unhealthy situations. And sometimes I bring Sally Susie Sally comes along. And sadness is one of those emotions that I think as a culture, we're afraid to show. We don't want to show people that we are weak. And so we try very hard to not show that we're crying. And but sadness, in releasing that sadness, can provide a lot of health benefits. So about me, and here I am in my superpower cloak, and I want all of you to visualize yourself when you have a really bad day and you're having those difficult emotions. Visualize yourself with this superhero cloak on, and many, of your superpowers. I know for me, many of my superpowers are my values, and they can change at any time. So for me, as Sarah had pointed out, I was a retired teacher. I taught for about 30 years, a special ed teacher, and I taught in all different grade levels and all different capacities of special education. During COVID, I became certified as a conscious parent coach through Dr. Shefali Tisbury Conscious Parent Coach sessions. And my business now is called Heartwise Relationship Coaching. My focus is doing presentations for educators because as a former teacher, that is my passion, but also my focus is also connecting adult parents, adult children, and grandparents. So if you would like to look me up, and I would hope that you could go to my website, which is called Anne-Marie at heartwiserelationshipcoaching.com. So here we are. I love this quote by Dr. Mark Brackett. It talks about emotions like a river. And as we continue to organize and feel our emotions, we hope that they will pass through us like a river. And this is a really good visualization, because when you do struggle with those emotions, I'd like for you to think about this river and how we want these emotions to flow through us and not get stuck. So, and this quote that I have here, and this was in 2017, where educators were feeling very overwhelmed, stressed, and frustrated. And now, during the pandemic, we have many more stressors. In fact, I read recently that within the last 5 years, teachers, especially those that are new to the field, are leaving because of burnout. And as we know, during your time that you're teaching in the classroom, you are constantly being bombarded. There is, if you're working at the elementary level, you're perhaps having to assess students all the time to make sure they're meeting benchmark. You're required to prepare students for the state mandated test. You're also being constantly interrupted with a lot of the distractions that go on in the class. Many of us are responsible for teaching diverse learners, so you're modifying curriculum within the classroom. You are now, during the pandemic, you had to learn a new skill for many of you, which is teaching online. And then for others, it was teaching a hybrid model. And now you're dealing with, some schools are saying it's okay to go without the mask, and some schools are still requiring it. We have, the vaccine mandate where some families were not getting vaccinated. So there's a continuation that's constantly being bombarded. And it's not like sitting in an office all day, although you may have pressures that you're dealing with, but it's different because you are also dealing with the emotions that the students are bringing into the classroom. So my housekeeping.
Anne-Marie, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you just really quickly?
Yes, sure.
Drew popped something in the chat that I thought was really interesting. And he said, for me, it's not about a bad day, it's about a bad moment. Managing anger or frustration when a student triggers me as a teacher. And I thought that was such an astute sort of perspective on, it doesn't necessarily have to be sort of like the whole day, right? It could just be this
And
like
right,
one particular instance.
absolutely. And Drew, you know what? Our emotions change constantly. And I'll explain as we continue, but you are right. And, you know, it's understanding where those triggers are coming from. And as you said, it could be moment by moment. So this is my little housekeeping acronym, which is learn. L is listen reflectively. E, engage in the discussion. A, allow others to speak. R, respect all opinions. And N, no texting or no sleeping during the presentation. I did a presentation also last week where a friend of mine who was on the presentation said that somebody was flossing their teeth during the presentation. So I'm sure people do a variety of things during the Zoom presentation. So some of the workshop takeaways today is understanding the acronym RULER, and we'll be discussing that. Discussing how emotions in our body give us valuable understanding and where that does come from, and how we have been taught by culture to repress those emotions and why that is really not healthy for us. So many of us don't really know how to express our emotions in healthy ways. So when someone will ask you how you're feeling, most of the time we're saying, fine, great, okay. You know, you might even get the sign like, okay, you know, everything's going fine. However, you may not be feeling that way. And so this is what we have been taught, because we don't want to let other people know what our inner feelings are, because you know what? That's not how we function as a community. And if someone said, you know, I'm really disappointed, frustrated, angry, you would have to take the time to really listen to what they're saying. And as we know, we're a fast-paced society, and we don't want to take the time that's necessary to allow somebody to really state how they're feeling. So I love Brene Brown, and I love this quote. People do not want someone to drag them in the deep emotion of turbulent waters, because now you have to drag them out. And it was what I had been talking about before, that somebody needs to, if you say, I'm feeling despair, or I'm feeling sad or disappointed, someone is going to have to take the time to listen to you. However, in a classroom situation, when a student says, you know, Mrs. Downey, I'm feeling worried, or I'm feeling frustrated, you may not have the time at that moment to talk with the student, but perhaps you can say, you know, I don't have the time to address this now, but I would absolutely love to hear more about this. Could we do it during lunch? You know, maybe you want to eat lunch with the student, or, you know, it could be after school, but it's taking the time to listen. Also, why do we repress emotions, and what messages do we get? And I know, you know, my mother would always say, I was a really sensitive child, so I would always have these big emotions. So she would hold out her hand. This is what the hand means, stop. You know, we don't want to hear about it. Or my partner might say, you know, calm down, relax, things are just going to work out. And, oh, don't be so dramatic. And I'd like you now maybe to take a few seconds in the chat box to just tell me, how did culture tell you, or in what messages did you receive, either now or growing up, when you had difficult emotions? So if you can just write that in the chat box now. So I don't know, I'm not seeing them now, but Sarah, you probably are.
So Drew said, write about them. Nadine said, due to her background, growing up in the Army with Army parent or parents, she was taught to suck it up and keep going. And then Clarabelle mentioned the just relax thing.
Yeah, just, just relax. And, for me, I remember there when I was, my kids were young and I was aggravated with something and I was yelling and the windows were open and the ding dong, the bell rings and it's the pizza man. And I went down and perfectly calm with a big smile. And, I'm thinking to myself after when I closed the door, he probably said, gee, who was that witch yelling upstairs? Because this lovely woman greeted me at the door. So again, mask, we don't want people to see what we're really feeling. And I came up with this acronym called RAISE, and don't wallow in the RAISE. That means when you're having these big emotions, don't resist them, avoid, ignore, suppress, or entangle in them. And hopefully when you come up with some difficult emotions and they're coming at you all at once, hopefully you can think of this acronym. It's not healthy, and we know that now, to suppress our emotions. It just doesn't work because they're always there. So emotions send us throughout the day, moment by moment, as Drew had pointed out. We have a roller coaster of emotions as teachers in the classroom. So for example, it's morning. You look out your window. It's another gray, dark Chicago winter day. You get into your car, so now you're in your car, there's a lot of traffic. And so now you're feeling a little bit glum. Oh gosh, there's so much traffic. And now you think, oh my goodness, am I going to make that early morning meeting? So you're feeling nervous. Now you get to the school, you park the car, great, you get there, but the meeting has already started. It just started. So now you're really feeling worried. You run into the building, you gather all your stuff together. You're feeling overwhelmed at this point. You get to the meeting, you can breathe a little bit, and perhaps a great initiative that you were very much involved in has been approved and you're feeling delighted. The meeting is over and now there's a bunch, if you work in an elementary school or even a high school, there's a bunch of kids at the door waiting to get in. You have to greet them with your mask because you're feeling, again, those roller coasters of emotions. And if you're in an elementary classroom, kids are coming in, they need, a permission slip signed. Another kid is saying, the parents were working, so they didn't get their homework done. Or, another student is complaining that they forgot their snack at home. So there's all kinds of things that you're dealing with moment to moment, and you're ready to just pull out your hair. Those emotions have been tucked deep inside the backpack now, and you throw the backpack in your closet, lock it up, because after all, you have to present a nice smile. Well, kids can't see you now smiling, but you have to just present a very calm presence. And I want to just make sure that you all know that the kids are always watching you. So again, it's how you're modeling your daily emotions is going to be how they are going to model their emotions. You are the person that they're looking up to in terms of helping them. So emotions in the classroom. And during COVID, especially if you're working in a neighborhood where there's limited resources, maybe perhaps parents have to work, maybe they always worked 2 jobs, they're not home a lot, the kids are not seeing them, there's a whole array of emotions kids are bringing into the classroom. And how they handle it, it depends. Some schools are lucky enough to have a literacy curriculum. So they're teaching students, if you have these emotions, this is what you need to do. Some students have classrooms where maybe there's a poster that's hung up and there's some, faces that kids can look at and how they're feeling. But for other classrooms, there is so much that teachers have to get accomplished during the school day. There's just not enough time. So it's difficult, but we have to know that kids are watching us all the time. And we have to understand how we are going to handle and regulate our own emotions before we can teach the children. So again, here's Brene Brown, and I got this book, Atlas of the Heart, for Christmas. It's a wonderful book. And in that book, she has what's called the 4 B's of human emotion. She talks about the biology and where emotions are felt in your body. And many of us, that's the first place that we notice, something isn't right. My heart is beating. Maybe perhaps I have a little bit of, there's something like little butterflies in my stomach. Perhaps my hands are sweating. What's going on with me? And we can look at the biography, people's temperaments. Everyone comes into the world with a different temperament. So for example, if a parent says to you, well, Mrs. Smith, in Mrs. Smith's class, my son Joe could get up 1,000,000 times and Mrs. Smith didn't worry about it. But now he has Mrs. Downing, and Mrs. Downing is not too happy about it. Well, Mrs. Downey's temperament is very different than Mrs. Smith's temperament. Also, behaviors. So are we showing, are some children though can't release those emotions, but some kids are acting those emotions out in the classroom. They may be crying, they may be yelling, they may be nudging the kid, in front of them. They may be making noises. Really, what is going on? And then what's the backstory? And that's really important to understand. So if a child, maybe it's, we're going to say Joe again, he is always looking pretty glum, or his shoulders are like this. Well, we don't understand, or if we don't take the time to understand, where is Joe coming from? What kind of family life does he have? Perhaps what triggers are going on in Joe's life? And it's like our colleagues too. I remember working in the school, and there was a teacher there that would never say hi to anybody. And she always was very stoic looking and very stern. And if another person said, well, what's wrong? And I'll just use, the term Mrs. Brown, what's wrong with grouchy looking Mrs. Brown? Well, nobody ever really took the time to find out, well, really, what is her backstory? And we need to really figure that out before we can just judge Mrs. Brown. So what areas in our lives are affected by our emotion? Well, we know that when we have these difficult emotions, especially, during COVID, and, our students are coming in with a variety of different emotions depending on how family is handling what's going on. And we're coming in and we're triggered by different things. It really makes it hard to really learn. And also decision-making. There had been a study that was done with middle school teachers where they were divided into 2 groups. One group of middle school teachers were only exposed to positive situations and positive emotions, and another set of middle school teachers were exposed to negative situations and negative emotions. And then these teachers were asked to correct their middle school students' essays. Well, The teachers that were teachers that were exposed to positive emotions were giving their students higher grades than the teachers who were exposed to negative emotions. And then we know that emotions, especially negative emotions that are built up over time, and that I always like to say that are hidden in our human body basement, they're there. And if they're not released, our health really suffers. Also, I volunteer at Lurie Children's Hospital, and my supervisor was saying that especially during COVID, there have been so many kids that have been coming into the hospital with mental health issues. So it affects us physically and it affects us emotionally. So we all know that emotions really do a number, especially unhealed emotions. And again, it's not the emotions, the negative emotions that affect us. It's the continuous stories that we keep telling ourselves about these negative emotions. And then relationships. We know how important relationships are in the classroom. And you could be the most phenomenal facilitator and you really know your stuff, but you don't develop relationships with the students that you teach, it's going to be a difficult year for you. And also coming together in your personal life, in your professional life, we all know that we need people. And so relationships really are important. So we want to become emotional scientists rather than emotion judges. And what does it take to become emotional scientists? It takes the ability to question. Why are we feeling, if we're looking at ourselves, what is this sensation in my body? It really feels uncomfortable. What message is it showing? What message is it telling me? If, for example, you look at a student and perhaps it's a student that usually is happy or very attentive, and now you see this, well, you want to explore that. You want to know, maybe you call the student up later and say, I was just wondering, I saw you looked pretty down, your shoulders were down, you didn't have, your face looked like it needed some attention. What's going on with you? Rather than judging it. And, you could be saying again, well, that's Joe. That's the way he always portrays himself. Or that's, Mrs. Downey. She always has that look on her face. So, and also, our inner critic is always judging us instead of, the inner critic might say, oh, Anne Marie, you shouldn't feel this way. Why do you always feel this way? This is your pattern of yours. And, it's speaking very harshly to me and judging my emotions rather than becoming a scientist and really trying to explore what are those messages telling me or us. So regulating your emotion, and I like to use the acronym that had been created by Dr. Mark Brackett and David Caruso, really recognizing these emotions and understanding what does it mean, when I'm getting this sensation in the body. That's really, our thoughts create our sensations. So that's our nonverbal stuff going on is really an indicator that I'm not really feeling good with this, or perhaps I'm not really feeling good with what is said to me today. So first thing we have to recognize, and I have these quadrants up here. I don't want you to look right now at the words, but I want you just to look at the quadrants. So the quadrants have different colors, red, yellow, green, and blue. And they're measured in degrees of high pleasantness, low pleasantness, high degrees of energy, and low degrees of energy. So If, for example, I'm going to get evaluated by my principal, say, and I go and I prepare this fantastic lesson. Well, my computer is not working well when I go to do it in the classroom, and I've left all my materials at home. I am in the red zone. I have high energy, but low degrees of happy feelings. I perhaps am in the, so another situation is, you know, there have been days and days of this discussion about the mask mandate or vaccination. I am just feeling blue. I'm feeling really under the weather. I am feeling low pleasantness and low energy. I'm in the blue zone. Now I am so excited. I wrote a grant for Chicago Foundation of Education, and yahoo, I'm getting money to do something with it this summer for my classroom. So I am in the yellow zone, high energy, high degree of pleasantness. And then perhaps I'm at home during the weekend and I'm feeling very relaxed. I am putting soft music on. I'm reading a really nice book. And I am in the green zone. I'm feeling very pleasant and I have low energy. So I don't know if you all are familiar with Dan Siegel, and I love him as a, my friends always tease me that Dan Siegel is my boyfriend, but he's just an amazing man. He's a psychiatrist. He's written many, many books. And I don't know if you're all familiar with the whole brain child, but in simple terms, he really makes it very understandable on how our brain works and how our brain, and explaining that to kids he talks about the upstairs and downstairs brain and how kids can learn to regulate their emotions. Also, and then here again, I talk about understanding. So when we're trying to understand, we're asking questions, and that's really important to do. And I know I discussed this before. And it brings me here to the label. And again, we have Dan Siegel, in order to tame it, you must accurately name it. And that's why now there's so much discussion on labeling emotions. And I like to go back to a few slides ago where our mood meter is. And some teachers have an emotion wheel in their classroom that has all of the emotions labeled. If you're lucky to be in an emotional literate classroom, you're always talking about labeling your emotions, because many of us only know 5 emotions. We're either happy, sad, fearful, disappointed, and angry. But there are so many different ways to explain accurately how we feel. And these labels can give these emotions intensity or less intensity. So for example, if a colleague might say, well, I was really bullied by that parent. Well, perhaps they could say, you know, I was really badgered by the parent. I was harassed by the parent. Maybe that's going to take the intensity away. And also in our classrooms, having children learn this language of emotions is really important. It really legitimizes how we feel. And it really is important to convey how we feel accurately to another, because we want people to convey these emotions to us. So labeling is just so important. And we are going to. So here's the next, now we're in the E of the ruler. The E to me is one of the most scariest of emotions, because now we are going to express to the world how we're feeling. So when we do this, when we express how we're feeling, we really have to understand who our audience is. You know, you're apt to be more vulnerable with people that you can feel very close to and people that will offer the space for you. And in the classroom, when a child who is not able to express these emotions, by giving them, and I'm going to move above to labeling, gives them a chance to, and if you have the labels in your classroom, to encourage them to use those. Also, it's encouraging you to use that. And when you are able to express your emotion, to use those I statements. You know, I was disappointed today, maybe you say this to a colleague, when you kept coming in and out of my classroom. That created a lot of distractions for me. You were able to express it with compassion and be clear and concise in your message. Expression also involves listening. So if you want somebody to have that open space, to allow you to listen to whatever comes across or whatever you're talking about, especially when it involves difficult emotions. Have you ever encountered a situation where you're talking to somebody and you're talking to them about a difficult emotion and you notice that they're texting on their phone? Or if you are, say, at a dinner party, perhaps you are talking to somebody about a particular emotion and somebody else comes by and all of a sudden they're gone to somebody else. So when you're expressing your emotion, perhaps do it at a time when you know that that person can really listen to you. So now, ways to regulate our emotion. And, you know, when you are in this space, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what is going to be my toolbox? So I'm hoping to give you some tools that can possibly help you when you are in situations like this. Now, remember, these are tools that are perhaps very quick and very temporary. It's only perhaps when you can sit with your emotions and really understand how to deal with them in an effective way. And it takes time. I had to do this as a parent coach and as a relationship coach. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of courage. But, you know, that's really the long-term effect. But short-term, what can we do? So I love to use the positive self-talk. So, for example, if you're in a meeting and you're very aggravated with what, say, the principal is saying or somebody is saying at the meeting, you go into the bathroom or maybe later on and you talk to yourself. You perhaps think of yourself like I had with the red superhero cloak on and say, you know, and you address yourself in the third person and you talk about, you know, all of your wonderful qualities. I know, Anne-Marie, that that was really bothersome for you, but let's investigate why. You know, perhaps, you know, we just, you know, you talk to yourself in a kind way. Think about maybe a trigger. Why is this bothering me? Maybe it was something in the past that, you know, I was triggered by, and this person is saying that the same thing. So again, you're trying to be the emotional scientist, but you're also trying to give yourself a pep talk. Mindful breathing is so powerful, but perhaps not, you know, when you're in the moment, it might be hard to do. But, again, poor Drew, I'm addressing this to you in the classroom. There is time that you can take a deep breath. And a deep breathing is so important because it gives you the oxygen that you need. It activates the sympathetic nervous system. So the release of the cortisol hormone, which is the stress hormone, is released, and perhaps it can lighten your mood. So mindful breathing, and I do this quite a bit, is just extremely helpful. Speaking up, again, I talked about this before, depending on who it is, and if you can get yourself into a way that you're not coming across as defensive, you can give the message that it's clear, concise, but, especially if someone is constantly breaking your boundaries, and do it in a responsive way and not a reaction way, and do it when you are able to, you're in a good place. Practice, practice, practice. Forward-looking strategy. If you know that a colleague is going to the same conference as you are, and it's somebody that you continue to be aggravated by for whatever reason, you're just always triggered by this person, you can just, when the conference begins, look around, you see that person is sitting in one place, you sit on the other side of the room. Again, it's not a long-term fix, but perhaps it's a way to regulate your emotion at the moment. Attention, so diverting your attention. For example, you're at Whole Foods, it's the end of your workday. You have to get home, you have to cook for your kids. Now there's a long line. You are feeling extremely anxious, frustrated, worried, like, oh my, are my kids, I have to, maybe you're taking them to soccer practice, or you're taking them to their activities. You can, draw your attention to something else. It could be maybe you're reading some messages on your phone. It could be that you're looking at magazines. It doesn't make the emotions go away completely, but for that minute in time, it's a quick fix. The meta moment, and I love this, the meta moment is the pause. So we all, it's not, again, it's not the emotion. It is the story, and it's the way that you are expressing the emotion, because that's all you can control is yourself. So the meta moment gives you the time to pause. If a colleague is yelling at you, or a kid is having a major breakdown in the classroom, have the pause, give yourself the time to just respond rather than react. Now, if you're at home and you get a phone call and your negative emotions are really activated, it could be that you take time to pause, take a walk, put some music on, just do something that's going to get your mind and your body in a better place. So it's not suppressing those emotions, it's just for the time to take a temporary pause. So now, everyone, I'm going to be sending you different PDFs regarding processing emotions, what triggers me. Affirmations are so helpful. And I like to do this in the morning, especially if I know I'm going through something difficult, or I know I'm going to be facing something difficult. These are great, and I like to do them in front of the mirror. I think it's really helpful. And then I know somebody had mentioned writing it down. Journaling is just extremely important, and I will be giving you some journal prompts as well. So now, here are some of the resources from Heartwise Relationship Coaching. I would strongly recommend, if you're not familiar with this book, by Renee Jain and Dr. Shefali Tisbury, wrote a book on superpower. I have about 6 copies in my collection. It's a wonderful book because it's something that you can do with the children. It allows them ways that they can use their superpowers when they are facing some difficult emotions. It's just, it's really a great book. And I have a lot of resources that were given to me by Renee Jain. So if you ever, for example, would like me, I know now people are not coming into the school, but in the fall, if you would like me to perhaps do a lesson on this book or a book study, I'd be happy to do that with you. I am certified in meditation for educators. I would be delighted. And if you wanted me to come and do some meditation with teachers, again, I know not right now, but perhaps in the fall. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And also, I'm hoping to get certified in meditation with children, and I'd be honored to come into your classroom and do meditation with the students. It really is so helpful. So now I like to stop sharing my screen, go over some of your questions. It would be great. We'll have a little conversation. And then I'd like you to come back to the last screen that I have, and that's just music. And it's really a message that I know, teachers, I have so much compassion for all of you, and it is a really, really tough time. And I often say to my husband, you know, as much as I loved my job, it would be so difficult to be a teacher right now. And, you know, I have a lot of sympathy to, again, I talked about all the things that you're going through. But one of the things that I failed to talk about was the creativity. And creativity in classrooms right now, there doesn't seem to be a lot because you are all required to teach in a certain way. So anyway, that's just my last comment. And now I'm going to stop the share and we're back. Oops, sorry.
Anne Marie, thank you so much. It looks like Nadine has her hand raised. So
Okay.
let's see if she'll come off mute to maybe ask a question.
Okay.
Sure. I was just trying to be patient until she was finished. First of all, as native to New Jersey, I really appreciate the way you say car and park.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it took me years to pick up a Midwest accent. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your time today. And I am going to make myself incredibly vulnerable by stating that I know that I'm in one of the deepest depressions that I've ever been in my career. If I could quit teaching today and find something that I could go into and still be able to support myself, I would do it in a minute. Unfortunately, you are absolutely positively correct. This has been in my 15 years of teaching, this has been the worst year.
Sorry, I'm just.
The saving grace that I have right now, and I just want to offer this as I guess reinforcement of what you're saying. Presently, my school is using Calm Classroom as a technique to help our kids to center. The kids find it more hysterical than anything, because if I play the tapes, they're laughing at the way that the person's talking, et cetera, et cetera. Getting down to the crux of the matter is that I have basically shared with my students that this is my first pandemic too. And the last time that this happened, my grandmother was probably a little girl. So that we all have to get through this together. And I basically, when you said relationships, I have created, especially in my seminar class, an environment for which the students really do support one another, and they actually support me. Without going into detail, my little brother, all 6'4" of him, had a heart attack, another heart attack this year, and I live in Chicago. He lives in California, so there's no way for me to actually go and see about him. He is married, but the kids noticed that I seemed a little bit sad and upset. And they recognized that, and they said, "Well, it's okay, Ms. Smith. We'll just sit here and do our work." And I had I call them little mamas and little daddies.
Oh, I love it.
Stepping up, and if anybody came to approach me about anything, they're like, "No, leave her alone. What do you need? What's up? What do you want?" Another technique that I use in the class, and this had me in tears. I have one student sit in the middle of the room and everyone else sit around them, and they are to say something positive and encouraging to that person. And I mean, several students cried, and I explained to the students that sometimes when kids come to school, they could have had the trash dumped on them in the first thing in the morning because their parents told them to take the trash out. And mama or dad meant what they said. And it said, how do you think that makes them feel when they come to school? So dealing with those emotions, it's one of the most supportive classes that I have. If they see that a student is upset, these students, they have literally stood in my room and hugged that person to give them encouragement and strength. So I really do appreciate some of the things that you shared, because I'd like to be able to utilize them in my classroom to even deepen that. But it's a horrible time, and I mean, it's not it's for me. I don't know about anyone else, and I want to be respectful as possible, but it's not the students. It's the administration. It's the things that are being asked on a daily basis. It's but we're encouraged to do self-care. Well, if you really cared about self-care, stop asking me to do more than what I should be right now.
Exactly. There's so many, I can't even imagine. I mean, lots of stuff was going on during my last 5 or 6 years, and I can't even imagine right now. But you sound like you are just doing a superb job in the classroom. Now, there's ways that maybe you can start really taking care of you, because as we know, we don't take care of ourselves and come in with a full tank. It's hard to take care of the people that are in front of us. So, and I know, I mean, I'm not there, and I know that it's probably like a battlefront every day for you. And, you're trying. Everybody, I'm sure, here is really working hard and really trying. So I offer all of you so much compassion. There, for friends who would tell me, well, I work in an office and I go through all these things. I say, yeah, and this was before COVID. You work in an office, but you don't have any distractions all day long. And you don't have to deal with the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis as a teacher. So anyway, any other comments? Or thank you so much for making that comment. And yes, I continue to have my Boston accent. And, people, when I first came here, are like, what is she talking about? Anyway.
Well, Anne Marie, thank you so much. This was such a nice kickoff for this 3-part series that you are leading us through. I popped some information in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me specifically. That's my email address. As I've mentioned a couple times, the recorded session from today and all resources, including the deck, the slide deck, and everything will be shared by email by the end of the week. And then, like I said, this is just the first in a 3-part series. So we have session number 2 is on March 24th, and session number 3 is on April 26th. That link right there is where you can register for either or both of those. I'll also include it with the email I send to follow up from here. So I don't want to keep anyone much longer, but Anne Marie, just again, thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable, and everyone here for doing all of the incredibly difficult, challenging, emotional work you do every single day. We are grateful for you, and we are here to support you. So if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Sarah Happy Night at CFE, and we just will continue to be here for you in all of the days and weeks ahead. So I hope you have wonderful evenings.
Right. And I'm going to just, I'm sorry, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. But I want to just leave them with one slide at the end. It's a little bit of fun music. And I also would encourage you to come to the next workshop, because we're going to have a lot of fun with that one. It's dancing with your emotions. And it will be more, we'll be doing some meditation, we'll be doing some tapping, we'll be doing movement. So it will be great. And I am going to just take up this last slide, which is the beginning part is a little bit muffled, but here we go. Oops.